Part 34. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 331. Chapter 331, Protecting the Inside and Protecting the Shortcomings. Yes, I am a suspect, but I am not afraid of coming to investigate. She looked at Chu Qiudong with a vague smile and said, besides, when it comes to being a suspect, everyone in this family is involved. As long as in this family, everyone has the opportunity to harm someone. Since the second grandpa is now the head of the family and is willing to seek justice for my grandpa, let's conduct a thorough investigation. Don't forget, the 3-day period will come soon, tomorrow. You have to give me a satisfactory answer. Chu Qiudong was shocked by her aura. He was stunned for a long time before he realized what was wrong. She was obviously the most suspect and the one who should be held accountable, but why did he have to answer to her? Suyun. Stop making excuses. The reason why this matter is not a big deal is entirely for the sake of the Chu family's face. Now that you are spreading the news, what are your intentions for making the matter so big? His crutches were heavy. He knocked on the floor tiles, making a banging sound. You have to explain. Okay, there is no need to wait for the elders of the Tomorrow clan to come over. I will tell you now. The appraisal report has proved that the incense was poisoned with chronic poison. If you are sensible and admit it, the family will suppress it and punish you according to the family rules, otherwise, you will go to jail. Tisk, tisk, are you putting the accusation directly on her head, without even asking for the so-called evidence? I thought I would at least pretend to produce some high-sounding evidence, but I didn't expect that I wanted to convict her in just a few words. Suyun laughed angrily. Okay, I don't like being sneaky, so just go to court and let me go to jail. It's just. After a pause, she continued, the police station doesn't talk about human feelings like our family does. It's all about evidence. I'm afraid that in the end, you will go to jail, but whoever goes to jail will matter. It's hard to say. Do you think you can escape the blame? With a cold snort, Chu Qiudong seemed to remember something, and raised his eyes to look at Yao's side. It turns out that there is someone protecting you, and you have a backer, so you don't even have to listen to your parents' words. Suyun was about to retort when Yao, who had been silent all the time, spoke slowly. Since it's about me, I have to interrupt. Old gentleman. He smiled faintly and called Mr. Chu Qiudong instead of second grandpa. Obviously, he did not regard him as a respectable elder. Old sir, I am a person who does protect my family and my shortcomings. When I am happy, I will support others, especially my woman. But to be honest, so far, out of respect for my wife's personal wishes, I have really not interfered. If you want to say that, then I will really protect you. Huanya is not only doing well in the beauty and cosmetics industry, but we are also good at the recent affairs of the Chu family. How do you want to write it? He thought it was too short to say so many words in one breath, and Suyun had never seen him speak such a long and threatening sentence calmly. It was obviously a polite and gentle tone, but it was so stunned that it made people's backs tremble. Cold. You. Putting one hand on his chest, Chu Qiudong was so angry that he beat his chest repeatedly. Okay, what a Suyun. I didn't believe you could do such a cruel thing to your own grandfather before, but now it seems that you can unite. It's not surprising that an outsider can do something treacherous when he treats his elders like this. Why, you can't be reasonable, are you starting to rely on your old age? Who would have thought that Yao would throw such a sentence at him in a nonchalant manner? This sentence was like a knife. Chu Qiudong's face turned purple from the pain, and he kept coughing. As an old man, you should take a good rest and recuperate. Logically speaking, if you live to your age, you should look down on fame and fortune. Why bother? After Yao finished speaking, he reached out to pull Suyun up. We are juniors, I won't disturb your rest, good night. From the moment he opened his mouth, Soo-yoon no longer needed to say a word. He was in control of everything, and he was blocking the wind and rain. Follow him quietly upstairs, follow him into the room, and say nothing. Seeing that she didn't say anything, Sci-Yao was a little at a loss what to do. Did my words make you unhappy? How is that possible? She hugged his waist and put her face against his chest. Thank you. Thank you for appearing in my life, thank you for protecting me and doting on me, and accompanying me all the way. Thank you for always protecting me without hesitation, thank you for always fighting side by side with me. Fool, Sci-Yao gently rubbed her head and hugged her. They don't want the news to spread. They are just afraid that the police's intervention will complicate the matter and make it difficult for them to control. If the police really intervened and the son murdered his father, this piece of news would be enough to make the Chu family lose face. Soo-yoon smiled bitterly, so Chu Chen also chose to endure it and did not call the police. What about you? He lowered his head and asked. So far, the outside world only knows the news of your grandpa's death. The inside information is unknown and has not been reported. So, you don't actually plan to call the police, do you? I have to consider the consequences of this matter. Everything in the Chu family is Grandpa's hard work. I will not let Grandpa's hard work be ruined, but I will not let go of the person who harmed him. Then what are you going to do? As he said, the Chu family has Chu family rules. We have our own set of family rules. I'm waiting to see what other tricks Chu Zinggao has. Yoon family. Yoon Chugseok came home after a tiring day at the company. As soon as she entered the door, she saw her father whom she had not seen for a long time. Dad, she raised a smile and called out affectionately, you came back so early today. However, Yoon Jongcheng did not return her loving smile as usual. Instead, he looked very unhappy and said, Shwe-er, come here. After being stunned for a moment, Yoon Chugseok immediately guessed what was going on, and walked over with a smile on her face. Dad, you don't look very happy. What's wrong? What happened? Let me ask you, your brother came to see you today, didn't he? He got straight to the point. Having said this, she couldn't continue to act stupid and nodded, yes. He said he wanted to be the person in charge of the new project. When I said I couldn't make the decision, he got angry. Clamoring to find you. Why, he really went to make trouble for you. Xiao Qian wants to make progress and make some achievements. This is also a good thing. As my sister, you should help him and promote him. How can you pour cold water on him? Wrinkling his eyebrows, Yoon Jongcheng said unhappily, besides, the new project department was not proposed by you, so why can't you make the decision? This was still blaming her, and Yoon Chugseok was not angry. She sat down next to him, held his arm and said softly, Dad, you really can't blame me for this. Originally, I could have suggested it, and the worst thing would be the uncle. I'm begging for mercy there, but you don't know that my uncle is not in the company recently, and a high-level meeting is required for such a matter, and it's not like you don't know those people in the company. Your uncle hasn't come back yet, Yoon Jongcheng interrupted her and asked. End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 332. Chapter 332. Can't I be my own backup? Yoon Bokin said he was going on a business trip last month and left the company for several days. He just came back a few days ago and is leaving again. He has been going out so frequently recently that Yoon Jongcheng has not even figured out whether this eldest brother is there or not. Of course, his focus has been on his son recently, and he wants to support him. He also wants to bring in women from outside, but he hasn't made arrangements yet. That's right, Yoon Chugseok was surprised, don't you know? He's been so elusive lately. How do I know? With a slight snort, Yoon Jongcheng asked, by the way, do you know what your uncle has been busy with recently? Does the company have any big projects? Why is he always on business trips? In fact, Yoon Jong-cheng has no talent when it comes to doing business. Because of this, although he wants to seize power, in terms of strength, he is still not as good as his elder brother Yoon Bokyeon. It's just that the eldest brother's only son Yoon Chwaeo is not interested in business. Seeing that there is hope, he wants to take the Yoon family's property into his own hands so that his son can inherit it. I don't know, and there is no big project that requires my uncle to make so many trips in person, I asked his secretary, but I don't know, in fact, I heard. The voice suddenly became quieter, and the mysterious look aroused Yoon Zongchen's curiosity. What did you hear? He looked around, waved the servant to leave, and then said in his father's ear, actually, I heard that my uncle was worried about his elder brother's affairs and was not in good health. So when he said he was on a business trip, he was actually hospitalized. It's just that we kept it a secret so no one knew about it. Really? Yoon Jong-cheng was very surprised. Of course, he was also skeptical about the news. That is his eldest brother. If he is hospitalized, will he not know about it? I don't know if it's true, but I think it's groundless. Recently, the company has indeed not had any big projects worthy of my uncle's personal participation. It has been run over and over again. Some time ago, my uncle's health didn't look good. Okay, everyone can see this. There is no news about the eldest brother so far. Who knows, it is possible that the uncle is angry and uncomfortable. At first he was quite skeptical, but after hearing what she said, Yoon Jong-cheng felt that the more she said it, the more sense it made. If it's true, we have to think about it carefully. He nodded thoughtfully. No, let your mother go see your aunt tomorrow and let her know. If this is true, we will. Here's your chance to go home. Yoon Chugzeo laughed and heard Yoon Jong-cheng say again, by the way, speaking of which, you should be more considerate and make arrangements for your brother's affairs. He must establish himself in the company as soon as possible. Remember, if you help him now, you are helping yourself. When he takes control of the entire Yoon family, you will not be afraid of being bullied by your husband's family when you get married, and you will have a solid backing. Turning her head and squinting at him, Yoon Chugzeo smiled and joked, Dad, can't I be my own backup? Frowning his brows, Yoon Jong-cheng shook his head, you are a girl. In the end, you have to rely on your family to support your brother. In the future, you will be a family. Okay, I understand. She didn't refute, just smiled softly. Smiling, he let go of his hand, picked up the glass on the table, and took a sip of the boiled water in it. Well, it was really cold. By the way, Dad, I've thought about the new project. It's not impossible to let Xiao Qian go. Later, I'll find a way to tell a few uncles and let him go. However, the person in charge before she could finish speaking, Yoon Jong-cheng said impatiently, I know, the one named, Luo Yuanhang, right? I've been busy these days and haven't bothered to ask you why you invited such a person. Did you know that the previous company went bankrupt? I know, I just use him because I understand him clearly. Ups and downs in business are inevitable, not to mention that he is experienced and capable, and he happens to be familiar with this area. Let's let him be his deputy. Giving Xiao Qian a helping hand can help a little bit. After all, I can't be by Xiao Qian's side all the time. What do you think? She thought about it and made an arrangement. After pondering for a while, Yoon Jong-cheng felt that this arrangement was good. He still knew what level his son was now. Although he wanted his son to take over the business, and he had spent a lot of time cultivating him since he was a child, he had no real experience or practical experience in the company, so it was of course best to have an experienced person by his side to give guidance. You still have to pay more attention to your brother and give guidance to your brother. You can't rely on an outsider. Also, you should pay attention to Luo and other things. Okay, Yoon Chugzeo nodded, then I'll go back to my room to rest. She got up and went upstairs. After turning the stairs, she heard something moving downstairs. She stopped and turned sideways to look downstairs quietly. Sure enough, she saw Yoon Chukyeon coming out of the room inside and running toward him with a smile on his face. "Father! Dad, I knew you still had to take action," he said happily. "In the company, my sister was still trying to make excuses, but as soon as you spoke to him, she didn't agree immediately." Yoon Chuk-seo smiled coldly, and then heard Yoon Jong-chang say, "Okay, now you are satisfied, don't make trouble with me anymore. It's up to you. I don't want to trouble you, but my sister is deliberately making things difficult. If she wasn't." "Don't say that either," Yoon Jong-chang interrupted him and said, "your sister has her difficulties. After all, she doesn't have the final say in the company, nor do I now that you have joined the company. You have seen the general situation, and you should know the good intentions of being a father, and you should do it well and learn from it. You have to know that in the future, these will belong to you and our family. From now on, Dad can count on you. It's you." Yoon Chukyeon's face was full of excitement, as if everything was already in his hands. "Dad, don't worry, I will definitely learn it hard. I have learned about everything in the company these days. Things look complicated, but they are actually simple. I just want to work hard to make a big project and achieve results that will impress all those old men and bring glory to your face when the time comes, right?" Of course, these words were just words for now, but they made Yoon Jong-chang very happy. He couldn't help but smile at the corner of his lips. "Okay. That's great. Dad is waiting to see your results." Downstairs, the father is kind and the son is filial. Upstairs, the smile on Yoon Chuk-seo's face is even colder. She has made so many achievements, but she has never seen her father so happy. If this is the case, then we cannot blame her for being a ruthless daughter. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 333. Chapter 333. What is your weakness? What, you let him sit in my seat? Luo Yuanhang, who had just returned from overseas, heard this bad news before his buttocks got hot from sitting down. "What are you in a hurry for? Do you care about the position of regional project manager? Or is this your vision and you only want so much?" Yoon Chuk-seo anticipated his reaction and said coldly. "Oh, I've only been sitting in this position for a few days. Now I'm going to give up my position. What do other people think of me? It sounds nice now, but even a mere project manager's position can't be given to me, and I'm asked to give it to that person. You're a loser? My good sister, I really doubt your ability." He tugged on his tie and sneered. Yoon Chuk-seo was not angry either. She said calmly, "But don't you think this is a good opportunity to get rid of him?" "What do you mean?" Luo Yuanhang was still annoyed. "You have to know why he wants to take the position of manager of this project department wholeheartedly." There was a mocking smile on her lips, "which is why she agreed to her father's request, take credit. He understands this new project department very well. If he can achieve something, he will be a great hero. He has the support of my father, who has attracted many senior people in the company, and he is just waiting to make some achievements so that he can climb up the company step by step. At the end, take it all." She spoke calmly on her face, but the more she spoke, the deeper the hatred in her eyes became. Even though she didn't say anything, she saw everything and kept it in her heart. Her father really worked hard, spent money and effort to make arrangements for this illegitimate son. Why? In the final analysis, he is just a wild species from outside. Why can he recognize his ancestors and return to his clan? Why should he take away so much? And she has worked so hard to win her father's love since she was a child. She is obviously so good, but she will never be in his eyes, so she will take everything away. You want to say that success or failure is closely related. Luo Yuanhang slowly regained his composure from the initial shock and understood what she meant. Yun Chugzio nodded, yes. If this project achieves results, it will be a great achievement, but what if something goes wrong? What if the error is very serious? Then the project manager will be responsible. People. My good brother, you said such a thing, how can I bear to let you take the responsibility? Since he is so impatient to be the scapegoat, why bother to stop him and let him go? He said his whole plan casually, I can't bear to hear it at all. Luo Yuanhang also laughed, but if something goes wrong, your good and conscientious father will clear his responsibilities at all costs. When the time comes, I will not be the one to take the blame. He also thought very clearly that even if Yun Chukian was the person in charge of the project, let alone that they deliberately wanted him to suffer misfortune, even if he was really stupid and made a mistake, there would still be people who would make plans for him. He would have thought of this, and Yun Chugzio had naturally thought of it too, and said disapprovingly, it doesn't matter. Don't worry, since he is asked to take the blame, it must be the blame that he cannot escape. In Yun's family, my father's words, the weight is not that heavy, just do what you should do, and help me keep an eye on this waste and don't let him cause any unnecessary trouble. Okay, I understand now that the matter was settled. He didn't care so much about this temporary reputation, so of course he stopped arguing with her. Then I'll go to bed first. Wait. Stopping him, Yun Chugzio couldn't wait to ask, you haven't said how your trip to Su City is going. Can you guarantee that it will go smoothly? I've given him everything, and he's not that unscrupulous. I found someone to keep an eye on him, and he has already contacted the veterans of their company. This person always has weaknesses. As long as he can grasp them with his weakness, everything will be easier. As soon as he lay down on the bed, Luo Yuanhang looked at the ceiling and continued to say to her on the other end of the phone, just wait and see, there will be results tomorrow. After a pause, he added, even if you take a step back, if these evidences are not enough and if the evidence is not enough, you can still use force. Marshal, Yun Chugzio raised her eyebrows and laughed, you are too naive. Have you forgotten that the Chu family is originally a family of ancient martial arts? If you use force, do you think Chu Zinggao moved a company to seize the Chu family's property? It doesn't require a company, just the Gao family with sufficient combat readiness is enough. Chu Zinggao also brought other Gao families with him. Who are they? Luo Yuanhang shook his head, I'm not sure, but he did come prepared. I've also inquired in detail, and the entire Chu family is just in name now. Except for a few eldest disciples, the rest of the people are not very good. Chu Chen is busy with the company all day long, and I'm afraid he has long been unfamiliar with this aspect. As for the other one. With a sneer, he stopped talking. Yun Chugzio naturally knew who he was talking about, and she also laughed, why don't you continue talking? I've said everything I need to say. Now I just want to have a good sleep and wait for good news tomorrow. He yawned and wanted to hang up the phone and go to sleep. You say. Her sudden words made him temporarily stop pressing the hang up button, and then he heard her continue, everyone has their own weaknesses. What about you? What is your weakness? After 2 seconds of silence, Luo Yuanhang asked, then what is your weakness? Hang up after asking, actually not caring about her answer at all. Only. After hanging up the phone, he seemed to suddenly lose sleep. He opened his eyes and looked at the ceiling, with Yun Chugzio's words echoing in his ears, what is your weakness? Many pictures inexplicably floated through his mind. He had a low self-esteem and was introverted since he was a child. Later, he wanted to work hard to get ahead. Then he met Su Yun and Zhang Shiwei, and then he founded Wulan and was full of high spirits. It is undeniable that there was a very happy time when he thought he could be a strong man and stand on the top of the mountain. However, it collapsed overnight. Company, career, love, woman. Everything was far away from him. He was being chased for debts and being reviled. He ran around like a mouse on the street, and then he met Yoon Chug-seo. Of course, he knew very well in his heart that she was not the angel who redeemed him, but she was also a demon who wanted to drag him into a deeper abyss. They were actually the same kind of people, but he was willing to give it a try. A weakness. The picture in front of me disappeared with the smoke, and gradually only a face remained, a face that slowly became clear from blur. That face. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 334. Chapter 334, kicked out of the house long ago. Chu family lobby, 9 o'clock in the morning. At this moment, it can be said to be grand and solemn. The elders of the Chu family sat in a row on each side. In the upper seat sat Chu Kyu-dong. He coughed twice from time to time, and there was a sandalwood box beside him. Without opening it, he knew what was inside. The most important seal of the Chu family. Soo-yoon specially wore black clothes and looked a little solemn. Looking in her direction twice, Chu Kyu-dong was still quite angry about what happened last night, but now that he didn't see Si-yao, he felt more comfortable. This girl is difficult to deal with. When a girl grows up, it is better to take her out of the house as early as possible. It seemed that everyone had arrived, except for Chu Zenggao and Chu Chen. As time passed, the initial quiet gradually started to become noisy. Someone lost his temper and asked the head of the family, "Second brother, it's been more than half an hour, and seeing Hao and Chu Chen haven't come yet, so now, are we going to wait like this?" Almost Chu Kyu-dong looked calm, his eyelids drooped slightly, and he said two words lightly. Since he said this, it was hard for others to say anything and could only wait. No one knows how fast he is almost and how long it will last. Soo-yoon was not in a hurry. As a junior, she sat in the seat at the back and drank tea leisurely. Today we not only have to resolve the matter of framing, but we also have to resolve everything. In 3 days, they could create evidence and traps, and she would have enough time to fight back. About half an hour later, the sun had already risen, and the lobby was so bright that it even felt a little hot. The light was so dazzling that Chu Zenggao appeared. Contrary to Soo-yoon, he wore all white and had a white flower on his chest, but he didn't feel particularly sad, and there was even a little bit of happiness in his eyes and brows that couldn't be concealed. "Second uncle, I'm late," he raised his voice. "Uncles, I'm sorry, I'm late." When he passed Soo-yoon, he glanced at her from the corner of his eye, and there seemed to be a proud smile on his lips. Soo-yoon raised her head and smiled back at him. Although he didn't look directly at her, he obviously saw her smile. He was slightly startled, and the smile on his lips froze in an instant. He hesitated for a moment, then quickly reacted and walked forward quickly. Looking around, he cleared his throat and nodded to Chu Kyu-dong, "I think people are here. Second uncle, let's get started." Chu Kyu-dong nodded slightly and stood up using the crutches, while Chu Zenggao was busy supporting him. "Now that everyone is here, let's get started. Thank you all, everyone here today is from our Chu family. There is no one here who is an irrelevant outsider." He looked at Soo-yoon pointedly. Soo-yoon understood who the outsider he referred to was. He had always felt that Si-yao was an outsider. What I want to talk about today is also about the important events of our Chu family. Although the voice is not very loud, it can be heard clearly by everyone in the audience. Our Chu family has a century-old foundation and has deep roots in Sioux City. It has always been. We were all diligent and self-responsible, and our family rules were very strict, but we didn't expect that my eldest brother, Mr. Chu, would pass away suddenly. His sudden death made us sad, but what is even more sad is that this was not an accident, but a premeditated event. Murder. At this point, his eyes fell on Soo-yoon, locking her almost as if he was targeting the murderer. Since he was so direct, Soo-yoon had nothing to avoid, so she simply stood up and said, "Second grandpa, what you said is wrong." "Oh," Chu Kyu-dong sneered, "tell me, what am I wrong about?" "Two sentences are wrong. First, you said that everyone is here, but not everyone is here yet. Chu Chen is my grandpa's eldest grandson. He is the most important person here. How can he do it before he comes? Where to start?" Facing her accusation, Chu Kyu-dong smiled disapprovingly. "It's true that Chu Chen is the eldest grandson, but in the end he is still a grandson. Xinggao is your uncle. As your grandfather and my eldest brother's eldest son, doesn't he have more rights to be a representative than Chu Chen?" "This is the second sentence you made wrong," Soo-yoon continued. "You said that everyone here today is from our Chu family, there are no outsiders, but there is one person, and he is not." "Oh." Hearing what she said, the others were confused for a moment. They looked at each other and looked left and right, curious about who was not from the Chu family. "I don't understand this. I have been in the Chu family for so many years. From old to young, I know everyone from top to bottom. Tell me, who is not a member of the Chu family?" Chu Kyu-dong sneered. With a faint smile, Soo-yoon took 2 steps forward, faced everyone's doubtful eyes, stretched out her hand, and pointed her index finger at Chu Xinggao. "That's him. Chu Xinggao is not from our Chu family." As soon as these words came out, there was an uproar. Someone else kindly reminded him, "Soo-yoon, are you confused? Xinggao is your uncle and your grandpa's biological son. How could he not be from the Chu family? Soo-yoon, stop talking nonsense here. You can't hide what you did. Hurry up and admit your mistake and beg for mercy. My uncle can still give you a way out for your mother's sake." Standing next to Chu Kyu-dong, Chu Xinggao, as if he considered himself a winner, spoke to her in a lecturing tone. "Uncle," this title was called out with contempt and sarcasm. Soo-yoon shook her head. "No, you are no longer my uncle. Second grandpa, other clan elders may not necessarily know, but since you said it, you are my grandpa's biological brother. You have been in the Chu family for so many years and everyone from top to bottom knows him. How could you not know that my grandpa kicked him out of the house a long time ago?" She kept pointing her finger at Chu Xinggao, and when she said expelled from the house, her voice suddenly became louder. Sure enough, these words surprised everyone else. For a time, everyone had different expressions on their faces. Some people knew about it, but they didn't expect it to be mentioned again here after so many years, so they kept silent. There were many others who didn't know about it and were shocked when they heard about it. Everyone knows that Chu Xinggao was the beloved youngest son of the deceased Mr. Chu. He left the Chu family that year and has not seen him back for so many years. I don't know why, but now that I think about it, there are some clues. But why would you drive your beloved son out of the house? Soo-yoon, don't talk nonsense here and try to deceive others. Whether I have been kicked out of the house or not has nothing to do with you. As a junior, what qualifications do you have to question me? Besides, this has nothing to do with what happened today. It doesn't matter, Chu Xinggao argued, with a very ugly expression on his face. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 335. Chapter 335, he actually raised a white-eyed wolf. Soo-yoon sneered, why doesn't it matter? The second grandpa just said that today is a family meeting of the Chu family, and non-members of my clan cannot attend. Since you have been kicked out of the house by grandpa, you are not a member of my Chu family, and of course you are not qualified. Stand right here. It's not your turn to comment on whether I am qualified to stand here, Chu Xinggao said with a gloomy face. You are wrong. Not only me, but every Chu family member present today is qualified to raise this question. Suyun did not flinch, her eyes were firm. Just as Chu Zinggao was about to refute, Chu Qiudong coughed twice and said, Suyun, what you said is right, but Zinggao is right too. I did hear about what happened back then, but it has been so long ago. How can father and son have an overnight feud? What's more, who doesn't know that Xin Hao is your grandfather's most beloved son? The so-called expulsion from the house, even if there is one, is just a moment of anger. How can it be taken seriously? Besides, after a pause, his eyes were light. Glancing at Suyun, he said lightly, you were still young when this happened. How could you know what it was like at that time? It's reasonable for you to be young and not understand. It seems to be a fair and objective analysis, but in fact, every word is used to excuse Chu Zinggao, and even a few words are used to shirk the decision made by his grandfather at that time. Chu Qiudong and Chu Zinggao are indeed wearing the same pants. Besides, Chu Qiudong put a fist on his lips and coughed twice, then continued, anyway, Xin Hao is your uncle. It's too shameless and disrespectful for you to talk to your elders like this. Second grandpa, all of us in the Chu family are gathered here today to find out the truth about my grandpa's death. We are not here to discuss the rankings. If we are ranking based on seniority, there are many people here who are qualified to discuss the elders. It is more important to take turns. Unless Chu Zinggao is yelling here. Also, since he was kicked out of the house by his grandfather, he is not from the Chu family, so he is not my uncle. My attitude when talking to him has nothing to do with what we are going to talk about today. It doesn't matter at all. Sharp teeth and sharp mouth, Chu Zinggao narrowed his eyes and glared at her angrily. When he left the Chu family, this girl was not very old, and he was not deeply impressed by such a child at first, so naturally he didn't take it to heart. Over the years, he had been struggling outside, and he had heard a lot about the Chu family, but he didn't take such a yellow-haired girl to heart. Frankly speaking, if he didn't want to borrow this girl's hand, if he didn't need to use her, in Chu Zinggao's eyes, he couldn't see this little girl at all. Unexpectedly, on his way back to the Chu family to get back everything, this little girl would become the biggest stumbling block. Okay, Chu Qiudong poked the ground with his crutch, and he said in a deep voice, stop arguing here. Since you know that you are standing here today to find out the truth, stop talking about this. Talking about something irrelevant. Or do you want to change the subject? Not wanting to get entangled in this matter anymore, he turned his head and took something from the hand of the person next to him. Then he turned his head and looked at Suyun with sharp eyes. He walked towards Suyun step by step, stood in front of her, raised his hand and threw the document into her arms, see for yourself. At the same time, all members of the Chu family got the same copy, and everyone lowered their heads to open it and read it. In fact, Suyun could guess what was inside without looking at it. This was a conspiracy from the beginning. Since it is a conspiracy, there must be evidence to support the conspiracy. However, with some cooperation, she opened it and found 2 appraisal reports inside. One is a certificate regarding the cause of death of my grandfather. It clearly states that my grandfather died of heart failure caused by chronic poisoning. The other one is about the identification report of her incense, its ingredients and content, etc. It is specially marked in red letters that it contains chronic toxins that can cause heart failure. Putting the 2 reports together, it is clear that Suyun is the murderer of Duke Chu. After reading this report, the members of the Chu family had complicated expressions on their faces. They looked up at the little girl standing in front of them, their eyes full of surprise and disbelief. Of course they have met Mr. Chu's granddaughter. When her parents died when she was young, the old man took her back to the Chu family, so she could be considered to have grown up in the Chu family. That was her biological granddaughter. How could she do such a thing to her grandfather? Second uncle, my eldest uncle is Suyun's grandpa. How could she poison her grandpa? Is there any misunderstanding, or is there something wrong? Some people couldn't help but raised questions, and Chu Xinggao sneered, why do you think she dares to be rude to her uncle? Don't look at this little girl's pure and lovely appearance. In fact, this child will retaliate for his anger since he was a child. Just because she wanted to go out to learn how to make incense and my father didn't agree, she ran away from home. Later, she had a falling out with her own grandfather because of an outsider. You said I was kicked out of the house? Why haven't you been with the Chu family for many years? Broken ties. Let me ask you, why did something happen to your grandpa when you came back after so many years? Why was poison found in the incense you gave to your grandpa if it wasn't you? Didn't you make this incense yourself? You clearly hold a grudge and want to take revenge. Your grandpa was so kind to you and raised you in the Chu family for so many years. If it weren't for your grandpa, you would have been thrown away long ago. I went to the orphanage. I didn't expect that after so many years, I actually raised a white-eyed wolf. He was convicting Suyun with every word, and even the motive for committing the crime was arranged for her. What a well-intentioned person. Others had doubts at first, but after hearing what Chu Xinggao said, they were convinced. After all, it is a fact that Suyun left the Chu family and has not come back for so many years. She has heard about it to some extent. Now thinking about it, it seems that something like this happened to Mr. Chu after she came back to pay her birthday. The more I thought about it, the more I felt it was very possible. I couldn't help but sigh. I never expected that Duke Chu would raise a white-eyed wolf after working so hard all his life. Your grandpa is so kind to you, how could you do this to him? Even if you have conflicts and disagreements with grandpa, that is not the reason for you to be cruel. How can you be so cruel? Accusations came from all directions. It seemed that she had been convicted of the unforgivable murderer. It seemed that she could be convicted based on these two reports. Facing many accusations, Suyun looked unashamed. She straightened her spine and looked at Chu Qiudong and Chu Xinggao, with a sarcastic smile on her lips. Can you convict me based on these things? If so, then it is too easy to convict a person. Regardless of the authenticity of these two documents, even if they are true, why should I be considered the poisoner? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 336. Chapter 336. What are you afraid of? Do you dare to say that you didn't make this incense yourself? Chu Xinggao was full of momentum. He felt that the evidence he had in hand was enough. The appraisal report here has proved that the incense contains deadly toxins. What are you still arguing about here? Joke, Suyun sneered. The incense contains toxins, is it me who poisoned it? Not to mention whether the incense really contains the poison you call it, even if it does, why do you insist that it was me who poisoned it? Chu Xinggao seemed to have expected that she would say this, and said calmly, I knew you wouldn't admit it. But don't worry, I also have evidence in this regard. You made the incense yourself, and you admitted it? If it wasn't you who handed it to Chu Chen personally, do you mean it was Chu Chen who poisoned it? He then turned his head and signaled for someone to bring up a box, and then looked at all the tribesmen. Inside this box are the remaining incense that has not been used up. These incense also contain trace amounts of toxins. Although they are not fatal, the cumulative weight is also terrifying. I've already had someone test this. If you're not convinced, you can ask someone to test it again. Of course, Suyun understood that no matter how she tested it, the result would definitely be the same, because she knew exactly where the incense came from. No need, she raised her hand to fend off the person who brought the incense, and looked directly at Chu Zinggao. Whether this batch of incense is poisonous or not has nothing to do with me, because those were not made by me at all. You don't admit it, Chu Zinggao smiled. You just admitted in front of everyone that you made the incense for your grandpa with your own hands. Why, in front of so many people, you want to slap yourself in the face. Chu Zinggao, you know where the other 2 boxes that I admitted came from. Chu Zinggao couldn't help but feel a little panic when he saw that her eyes didn't dodge at all, and she didn't panic when faced with his doubts and a pile of evidence. It felt as if she had everything in mind and everything was under her control. Of course I know it in my heart. He suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and continued, this is what was found in Dad's room and was not used up. It killed his old man. Suyun, I read this. You are a junior, and I have given you some respect for your grandfather's sake. Are you still unwilling to admit it? If you admit that you are temporarily confused, I can still deal with it according to family rules. Spirit, what awaits you is a prison sentence. I'm not afraid of prison, and I don't know whose turn it will be, Suyun said, looking at Chu Qiudong aside. Second grandpa, what do you say? The 2 of them couldn't argue. Chu Qiudong never spoke again and seemed to be watching from the sidelines. Now that she was pointing the finger at him, she coughed twice and said, the evidence is all there. Although I am very sad that something like this happened to my family, and I don't want to believe that such a thing will happen, but since it has happened, I should always treat my eldest brother. I have an explanation for my clan members. Suyun, your grandpa was a bit harsh on you, but he was also deeply in love with you. Now that there is so much evidence, what else do you have to say? He was trying to make peace with his words, but he had firmly pinned the charge on her head. Suyun nodded. Second grandpa has also identified it as me. What you said is not that I identified it as you, but the facts are before my eyes. What do you mean the facts are in front of you? What facts? I only saw a bunch of fabricated so-called evidence. She took 2 steps forward and turned to face the crowd. Elders, let me here today to let others distinguish such evidence. It's really embarrassing. But the cause of Grandpa's death is very strange, and we must find out. Since Chu Zinggao has produced so much evidence, I also want to show you something. Chu Zinggao didn't know what she was going to do or what she would come up with. He was feeling uneasy. Little girl, what else do you want to do in front of so many elders? Uncle, don't worry. What are you afraid of? Suyun smiled faintly at him, and Suyun's smile made him feel uncomfortable. Suddenly, a projection appeared on the white wall of the lobby, and everyone realized that her projector had been ready at some point, and the picture played on the wall was a video. Others may have to figure out who the video is, but Chu Zinggao could tell at a glance that it was a scene of his transaction with Luo Yuanhang. There was a slight distance, but the shots were quite clear. Even when Luo Yuanhang gave him something, he took it and patted him on the shoulder. Everything was clear. Cold sweat broke out on Chu Zinggao's forehead. He never expected that her meeting that day would be known to her and even be photographed by her. But, how is it possible? He obviously went there by himself that day, and he had confirmed that no one was following him. There couldn't be any hiding place in that area. My mind was confused for a moment, but I had no time to analyze this at the moment. Someone had already recognized him in the picture. Isn't that, Xin Hao? Yes, who is the other one? What are they doing? Suyun smiled slightly and explained unhurriedly, I believe everyone can see clearly. The person on the picture is my uncle Chu Zinggao. As for the other person, everyone is very curious. Who this person is not that important. It is relatively I think everyone should know more about what they are trading. He moved his fingers slightly, and the screen zoomed in. When it fell into Chu Zinggao's hand, he could clearly see that it was a box. When he saw the box, Chu Zinggao secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there was a package. so he could not admit it was incense. Yes, I did meet a friend a few days ago. Why, you don't dare to tell everyone who that is. Then let me tell everyone. Chu Xinggao knocked the rake down and pushed it onto her. This person's name is Luo Yuanhang, is my niece's ex-boyfriend. As for why I met him, it was entirely because he couldn't stand my niece's evil deeds and handed me the evidence of her murder. As you can see just now. Some of those evidences were given to me by him. Then, he sighed and walked to Su Yun's side. Girl Su, I know it's impossible for you to admit to such a serious crime of murder. If you admit that you were temporarily confused, see if your elders can forgive you. Use family rules to punish sins, otherwise. Are you trying to say that the so-called poisonous incense that proves me was given to you by him? Su Yun suddenly asked. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 337. Chapter 337, What can I do in full view of everyone? Yes, Chu Xinggao blurted out, but felt something was wrong after he said it, so he quickly changed his words. No, that's not what I meant. You made those incense with toxins added, how could anyone else have it? He just told me I told you some disrespectful words you once said about your grandpa. But just now, you said he gave you evidence. Su Yun interrupted him and pressed hard. Why did you change your story so quickly? Okay, Su Yun took a deep breath and said, the farce should be over. She closed her eyes and raised her head, as if she was meditating, then turned to face Chu Xinggao. Since you keep saying that I was the one who poisoned you, then I will prove first that it is impossible that I was the one who poisoned you. How to prove it? Chu Xinggao asked subconsciously. Smiling at him, Su Yun suddenly took 2 steps closer to him and asked, Uncle, does the perfume I used today smell good? When she asked her unexpectedly, Chu Xinggao's first reaction was to sniff and smell it, but when he saw the smile on her face, he immediately realized something was wrong and quickly held his breath. What do you mean? Don't be so nervous. There are so many people, in front of everyone, in full view of everyone, how can I still poison you? She said with a smile, with a harmless look on her face. It's true to say so, but Chu Xinggao is always a little wary in his heart. He still keeps a distance and dare not breathe. If you have something to say, just say it. What's the mystery? Looking at him deeply, Su Yun smiled and said, Look, you don't even dare to get close to me and smell me. I have such means, why bother to put medicine in the incense and use so much incense, leave you a lot of evidence? Am I that stupid? You didn't poison yourself heavily at once because you were afraid of being found out. If I hadn't come back in time, if I hadn't noticed that I was sick, and you had fooled me, everyone would have thought that the old man just died of a normal illness. Chu Xinggao's reaction, it was pretty quick, and I came back with a rebuttal right away. Others sounded reasonable, but I didn't know who to believe for a while. Yes, chronic poison, Su Yun nodded. You mean, I added a very small amount of chronic poison to these incense, which accumulates over time, making people unaware. As she spoke, she walked along the side of Chu Qiudong and Chu Xinggao. Probably influenced by Chu Xinggao, Chu Qiudong subconsciously raised his hand to cover his nose, for fear of smelling something he shouldn't. Now I feel a little regretful for letting her get so close. Is this girl really capable of poisoning? That's enough. Chu Xinggao waved his hand violently. Stop pretending to be a ghost and talking nonsense here. Now the evidence is conclusive, you can't deny it no matter how much you deny it. He grabbed Su Yun's wrist and glared at her. Su Yun didn't panic when her hand was grabbed. She moved her fingers, looked directly at Chu Xinggao, and suddenly smiled. It's easy for blood to rush to your head when you are so excited. By the way, are you dizzy, uncle? She winked, looking very playful. Hearing her nonsense words and watching her blink at him, Chu Xinggao didn't know why, but the next second he felt a little dazed, and his eyes swayed. Although this feeling passed by in a flash, it was enough to make him panic and open his eyes wide. What did you do? I didn't do anything. I just thought you were so angry. Don't you feel dizzy, or, a little nauseous, she said calmly. Those who don't know about it may even mistakenly think that she cares about choosing Geo. It's okay that she didn't say it. After saying this, choosing Geo felt even more dizzy and a little nauseous. It was an indescribable feeling. He tried hard to keep his mind clear, but he couldn't control the sudden dizziness. In shock, he quickly let go of her hand. What on earth did you do to me? Choosing Geo's change was clearly visible to everyone. Although they didn't know what Soo-yoon had done, it was scary enough. They all immediately stood back in panic, fearing that they would also be affected. Especially Chu Kyu-dong, he was the closest, but he didn't understand what was happening at all. Seeing Choosing Geo swaying and not able to stand still, he felt even more dizzy. He hurriedly stepped back several steps, far away from her. After he stood firm, he calmed down and said, Soo-yoon, what are you doing? This sound was almost a roar. The panic in his heart couldn't be suppressed, and he vaguely felt that today's events were already developing in a direction where he was out of control. This girl who seemed to be well behaved and quiet actually had a side that was creepy even when she smiled. Second Grandpa, what you said is, what can I do in front of everyone? She shrugged, opened her hands, and looked innocent. Although she looks very innocent, everyone has seen the changes in Choosing Geo just now, and even now Choosing Geo's face does not look good. Now everyone looked at her like a monster and didn't dare to say a word. Actually, I just want to say that if I really want to poison, there are 100 ways to leave no traces. There is no need to use the stupidest one to leave any evidence. She dusted herself off. Chintu then slowly raised his eyes to look at Choosing Geo. As for you, don't be nervous. You just smelled a little bit of smell that would affect your appetite and perception. You will be fine in a moment. She said she was relaxed, but when others dared to relax, they all looked at her in horror. You poisoned me, someone asked tremblingly. Third cousin, it's not poison, it's just a little smell. So you all saw that I really want to poison, so there's no need to bother. The implication is that that method is too inferior and I don't even bother to use it. No wonder your grandpa passed away so quickly after you came back. Even if it wasn't incense, you might have used other poisons. I didn't expect you to be so good at poisoning, and you dared to say it wasn't you. Choosing Geo, who was standing beside him, felt a little uncomfortable. Better, he immediately scolded. The evidence she used to prove that she had not poisoned the incense became a means to prove that she had poisoned it. This is to put the accusation firmly on her head. Soo-yoon raised her eyes, smiled angrily, and pointed at Choosing Geo. I have shown mercy to you for Grandpa's sake. In this case, looking at her eyes, Choosing Geo suddenly felt a little unsteady in his heart. He glanced towards the courtyard, where his people were waiting. If anything went wrong at any time, they could rush in and take control of the situation. Soo-yoon, if you hadn't inflicted this poison, would there have been others? Or, do you have an accomplice? Chu Kyu-dong, who was standing by, tapped the ground with his crutch and said. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 338. Chapter 338 The most fair and equitable method. By saying this, he was trying to guide Soo-yoon, not wanting to bear the blame herself, so she would bite Chu Chen out. It had been made clear from the beginning that only she and Chu Chen had come into contact with the incense. This was because Chu Chen was not around and wanted to drag him into the water. Just, why hasn't Chu Chen come yet? Soo-yoon frowned and sneered. Who is the accomplice the second grandpa mentioned? Do you already have an accomplice in mind? You. Sorry, I'm late. A familiar voice sounded outside. Soo-yoon frowned and looked over. only to see Chu Chen walking in. He also had two people with him, one was his personal assistant and the other was a major director of the company, and Su Yun recognized them. When he saw the two people with him, Chu Qiudong couldn't help but frowned. Chu Chen, there is a family meeting today. Why did you come so late and bring an outsider with you? Outsiders, he looked both ways, then at Chu Qiudong, and then at Chu Zinggao next to him. He laughed twice. In this world, people's hearts are unpredictable. It's really hard to tell who is an outsider and who is one of our own. Very good. There was something in the words, and Chu Qiudong immediately changed his face. What do you mean by this? What does second grandpa not understand? It doesn't matter, you sit here and read slowly, you will understand soon. He motioned the two people around him to stand to one side first, and then turned to face everyone. Elders of the Chu family, I'm sorry I'm late. There was something delayed in the company, and some things needed to be resolved, so I was delayed a little. Chu Chen, I am in charge now, don't forget. Chu Qiudong was obviously dissatisfied with being ignored, so he took out his palm print and placed it on the table next to him. The dull voice reminded him that he had handed over the master's seal. Looking back, Chu Chen smiled and said, yes, if second grandpa didn't mention it, I almost forgot. Due to some trivial matters a few days ago, I temporarily handed over the seal of the head of the family to second grandpa for safekeeping. Thank you for your hard work. It's time to take it back and fulfill your responsibilities. Speaking, he reached for it. Unexpectedly, he would say this and go directly to get the seal of the owner. Chu Qiudong's expression changed and he subconsciously pressed down his hand. Chu Chen. What are you doing? How can the seal of the master be a piece of cake? Just give it when you tell me to give it, and take it when you tell me to take it. His face changed anxiously and he said angrily. Chu Zinggao's eyes darkened when he saw both of them pressing the seals of the master, as if he was about to reach out and them away in the next second. Facing Chu Qiudong's accusation, Chu Chen sneered twice. Child's play. You have been making trouble in the Chu family these days, trying to shake things up. You will do anything to win the seal of the head of the family, regardless of the face of the Chu family, and regardless of whether your grandfather's body is still cold. This is no longer child's play. Seeing Chu Chen's counterattack, Su Yun finally felt at ease. She almost thought that Chu Chen had given up, was discouraged, or had some other reasons, but at this moment she knew that the Chu Chen she was familiar with was back. Chu Chen. Do you know who you are talking to? Unexpectedly, Chu Qiudong was so old that his beard was shaking with anger. However, Chu Chen did not show any shame this time. With a cold smile on his face, as the head of the Chu family, I am in charge of the family affairs and make decisions about family affairs. Do you know who you are talking to? You. Chu Chen, Chu Zinggao shouted sharply, don't rely on your palm prints for 2 years, and you don't even remember the basic respect for your elders. Before the cause of the old man's death is investigated, it is still uncertain who the head of the Chu family is. Chu Chen nodded, yes. That's right. The truth about Grandpa's death should indeed come to light. So. He nodded to the assistant next to him. The assistant picked up the phone and said something sideways. He could only vaguely hear, okay, got it? Then he said to Chu Chen, it's almost here, about 3 minutes left. What did you do? Chu Zinggao stared at him, no matter who you call, today this is an internal matter of the Chu family. The Chu family's affairs will be settled by the Chu family. Now that the appraisal report is here, you still want to deny it? If you are wrong. Yang Shen interrupted him. Chu Chen put his hands behind his back, looking upright and upright. This is not an internal matter of the Chu family. Since the cause of Grandpa's death is unknown, this is a human life. Human life is at stake, and it is by no means a personal grudge. Therefore, as the head of the Chu family, I choose to use the most fair and equitable method to give my grandfather justice." As soon as he finished speaking, a sharp siren sounded outside. Hearing this voice, everyone was stunned. Chu Xinggao and Chu Qiudong's expressions even changed. "You called the police?" "Yes." "Let the police investigate. If Grandpa is really poisoned, what kind of poison he was poisoned, how he was poisoned, and who the murderer is, they will naturally find out." Chu Chen said and looked at Su Yun. Their eyes met and they smiled at each other. "Call the police." It was decided after she and Chu Chen discussed it. The Chu family is naturally a big family, and they have to take into account their face, public opinion, and influence, but these are nothing compared to the death of Grandpa. Just now she had not seen Chu Chen, let alone the police, so she thought something had gone wrong. "Chu Chen, you are unfilial. You are not caring about the Chu family's face. The Chu family will become the laughing stock of everyone. You are unworthy of the Chu family." Chu Qiudong scolded him heartily. But before he finished speaking, Su Yun stood up and said, "Unfilial. Letting the cause of my grandpa's death remain unknown and allowing you to convict people at random here is not filial piety to my grandpa. The face of the Chu family. It's such a turmoil now. What reputation does the Chu family have? The head of the Chu family is standing here and being questioned by you. This is already the biggest laughing stock of the Chu family. Don't you insist that I am the murderer? I will just stand here and let the police investigate. I have a clear conscience. The only people we should be afraid of are those who have done bad things." At this moment, even if Chu Xinggao and Chu Qiudong were reluctant, the police had already arrived and it was too late to say anything. The police, in addition to asking the forensic doctor to examine the real cause of Mr. Chu's death, also need to take the relevant people back for questioning. Chu Xinggao never expected that Chu Chen would call the police regardless of the reputation of the entire family. Before leaving, he stared at Su Yun fiercely and said, "Girl, do you think this will bring down your uncle? You are still too young." When he passed by Chu Chen, he didn't say anything and just stared at him fiercely. Su Yun naturally had to go to the police station, which was expected. She was also eager to know how her grandfather died and whether someone was really murdering him. No matter what, she will not let the murderer go. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 339. Chapter 339. Sister supports you. Obviously, the development of things was beyond the expectations of Luo Yuanhang and Yun Chugzhou. The secrets of wealthy families, once spread, will have an immeasurable impact on the reputation of the entire family. So no matter from anyone's point of view, I feel that this matter will be digested internally, and it must be suppressed and hidden so that no outsiders can know it. But this alarm was already known to everyone in Zhongcheng and even the whole country, not to mention the entire Su city, and it spread like wildfire. The media is the best at exploring and expanding their imagination on this kind of thing, not to mention that the Chu family is now in chaos. The police station is recording the confession, and Mr. Chu still has to wait for the forensic doctor's final conclusion, and the Chu family has been in chaos these days. The turmoil in the Chu family's company has even spread, and there is also quite a turmoil in the Chu family's company. Several senior executives have been interviewed. Of course, we don't know what was discussed. The people in the Chu family were in panic, and there were many different opinions from the outside world. Yun Chugzhou watched the news on TV, pursed her lips and took a sip of the red wine in the glass, showing a faint smile. Let's be chaotic, the more chaotic the better. The more chaotic it is, the more opportunities she has to take advantage of it, and the more likely she is to reap the benefits. Of course, the first thing that needs to be resolved is the matter at home. Boom. The door to the office was opened, and she knew who it was just by hearing the voice without raising her eyelids. She calmly turned off the TV, then put down her wine glass and looked over. Yoon Chuk-yeon walked in loudly, with a dissatisfied look on his face, and looked like he had eaten something. "Sister, you still have time to watch TV and drink red wine here. Do you know what a mess the people under your command are in?" he accused him unceremoniously when he came up, as if he had regarded himself as the owner of the company. Yoon Chuk-yeol was not angry either, and looked at him with a smile. "What's wrong? What did they do to make you so angry? My words are useless. Do they know that I am the person in charge of this project? Do they know that I am the branch manager? Why do they all listen to the words of Luo? Is this company's surname Yoon or Yoon? Your surname is Luo." His face looked indignant. It seemed that Luo Yuanhang had given him a hard time. Rolling her eyes secretly in her heart, Yoon Chuk-yeol thought, "Of course this company is named Yoon, but you are not from the Yoon family, so you think of yourself too much." Of course, she would not say these words. She just stood up, took a clean glass, poured him a glass of red wine, put it in front of him, patted him on the shoulder and said, "You also know that this company is named Yoon and belongs to our family. Why are you competing with an outsider? It's not that I want to compete with him, it's that he insists on fighting with me. I said that the company should invite some internationally renowned perfumers to mix top quality perfumes, so that it can win the market in one fell swoop and become famous. But he insisted. The salary of an internationally renowned perfumer is too high, and it doesn't live up to the name. Why, is it comparable to domestic perfumers? Who doesn't know that perfumers are very good from abroad?" Yoon Chuk-yeon also has a general understanding of the new project, but he himself is not too familiar with the perfumer industry, nor does he know who the most famous ones are. "However, I heard that the perfumers of famous brand perfumes are all from abroad, so I thought of inviting people from abroad to come. Firstly, it is relatively easy. Perfume prepared by a well-known perfumer can naturally open up the market easily. Secondly, I am eager to make some achievements. I want my father and everyone in the company to see it and be able to do so. Convince him. It was not easy for him to be raised outside as an illegitimate son for so many years. What his mother instilled in him was that he must join the Yoon family in the future and inherit the Yoon family's industry. I have learned a lot of theoretical knowledge about business, but I have never practiced it. Now that I have taken over a new project, I am very eager to achieve results." Of course Yoon Chuk-yeol knew his mentality and followed his words. "I think what you said is correct. But as for Manager Luo, he also has his own considerations. He is also experienced in this industry, maybe there are things we can't see, but he can." However, when she said this, Yoon Chuk-yeon became even more angry. "What can he see that we can't see? I think he just wants to go against me on purpose. He is not convinced at all that I sit in the manager's seat." He slapped the table hard. "Sister, I really don't understand. Why do you value him so much? Don't you know how notorious he is in this circle? My friends all said that he couldn't survive before. How did he get into you and trick you into using him again?" The implication is that Yoon Chuk-yeol was deceived by him. Yoon Chuk-yeol straightened up and darkened her face. "Xiao-jian, what you said is a bit too much. Manager Luo did make some mistakes before, and that is all in the past. No one is a saint, and no one can make mistakes. No, what is undeniable is that he is indeed very experienced and visionary in this industry. But, well, don't be angry first. I'll have a chat with him and ask him what he thinks. I will persuade him to do what you think." Put a hand on his shoulder and press it slightly. According to. Really, when he heard that she was willing to stand on his side and do what he wanted, Yoon Chuk-yeon was immediately happy and stood up suddenly. "Silly brother, we are a family. If I don't help you, Who will I help? Yoon Chugzyo said with a smile, just feel free and bold to do what you want, and work hard to achieve results. Don't worry, as long as I invite top international perfumers, I will be able to open up the market quickly, he said confidently. Nodding, Yoon Chugzyo then added, then you go ahead and do it, but Xiaoqian, I have to remind you that our company's capital budget may not be very sufficient, so. What, no money? His eyes widened. It's not that I don't have money, it's just that the budget is limited. You know the prices of top international perfumers. As long as it doesn't exceed the budget, everything is easy. You can do whatever you want, my sister supports you. Humbling on with fists, Yoon Chugzyo cheered him up. Seeing her like this, Yoon Chukian gained confidence again. Okay. Let's talk about the price at the worst. I have so many friends, just find some connections. As long as you support me, I will definitely be able to achieve results. Then sister is waiting for your good news. She watched him leave with a smile, and the smile on Yoon Chugzyo's face quickly froze. His face changed in a second, he lowered his head and pressed the intercom. Please come to my office. Speaking very quickly, he let go of his hands after speaking, and then sat down. Great show, it will be released soon. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 340. Chapter 340 is her style. Not long after, Yoon Chugzyo's office door was opened again, but this time, it was Luo Yuanhang who walked in. As soon as he entered the door, he saw the two cups that had not been removed on the table. He smiled and said, my little brother is here to complain again. If you don't come and file a complaint one day, I'll be dead. After a pause, he looked at him again, or you're dead. Ha ha ha. Luo Yuanhang laughed indifferently, it's impossible for him to die. Your old man is so precious that he wishes he could find 100 people to protect him. If I die, it's even more impossible. Haven't you heard that the harm will last for thousands of years? Okay, let's get down to business. I have already promised him to go ahead and do whatever he wants. Let him hire a top international perfumer to do whatever he wants. After a second of getting to the point, Yoon Chugzyo said seriously. Aren't you afraid that he really invited some famous artist, really mixed up a top-notch perfume, made a name for himself, made some achievements, and stole your limelight? He raised his eyebrows, pulled out his chair and stood in front of you. She sat down on the seat opposite her, crossed her legs casually, took out a pack of cigarettes from her pocket, slowly took one out, and lit it. Without stopping his movement, Yoon Chugzyo said casually, with you here, do I need to worry about this? I told him, the budget is limited. How can it be so easy to hire a top international perfumer, not to mention the lack of money? Even if the position is in place, it still depends on whether you ask for it or not. Don't you know this much better than I do? It's up to him to find friends and connections. There are really not many top international perfumers, and there are a lot of fake ones. What was the name of the one who was working in your company before, from Rosen? Still, it's not like he was prosperous, if he hadn't been in France later. She did not say any more, clearly seeing that Luo Yuanhang's expression had changed. Anyway, I believe you will arrange this matter. No matter how high you hold him up now, how hard he will fall when the time comes. Squinting her eyes slightly, Yoon Chugzyo felt that this idiot brother was not in her threat range at all. Inside. Of course, for the sake of superficial harmony and family relations, she doesn't need to take action. Since she knew when enough was enough, Luo Yuanhang no longer cared about the past. He took a slow drag on his cigarette and held his temples with one hand. You don't need to worry too much about this matter, but what do you think about Suchang? Shouldn't I ask you if you have any thoughts about this matter? She turned on the computer and the screen quickly lit up. Then she turned the monitor around. The page on the screen was about the report on the Chu family's incident. Your ex-girlfriend is also a jerk, call the police. It's her style, Luo Yuanhang breathed out fiercely, staring deeply at the computer screen and said, if she becomes ruthless, she will always be so indifferent. In the beginning, she would fight him no matter what, no matter how hard it was, and she would not give in when she went to court. She even left some escape routes, which made him subconsciously afraid of her later on. A person you thought you had firmly in your hands and could never turn the world upside down suddenly found out one day that she was not under your control at all and might even trample you under your feet. That kind of deep panic and reluctance, I will never forget it in this life. I don't care if it's her style or not. I just want to know, what are you going to do next? She tapped the screen with her finger and said, I think it will be difficult for Chu Zinggao to win in this power grab. If he loses, then all our previous efforts will be in vain. Originally I thought about recruiting a helper, but unexpectedly it turned out to be a pig teammate. They had already put the dagger into his hand, but a little girl capsized the boat. Luo Yuanhang probably also heard that the meeting between him and Chu Zinggao was filmed, and he was also surprised as to how it could be filmed. However, the people present at that time were all members of the Chu family, and there was not much news, so he was not very clear. Everything hasn't been completely settled yet, so don't be so depressed. Shaking his head, Luo Yuanhang raised his hand to dust off the soot. Don't forget, Chu Zinggao didn't come back to take over the country alone. You mean those people from the so-called ancient martial arts families he brought back? Yun Chugzu raised her eyebrows and said disapprovingly, don't say I'm pouring cold water on you. The so-called Gwo family is just too much rumored. Over the years, no one has really seen them take action, nor has they seen Gwo. How powerful is the family? Don't blame me for talking too much. You have been with Su Yun for so many years, have you ever seen her really that powerful? So, the ancient martial arts family in the past may have been really powerful. But don't forget, what era are we in now? How can their flesh and blood bodies be stronger than guns? Taking a step back, if he is really as powerful as the legend says, why didn't Chu Zinggao take action until the police intervened? I think it's just a bluff. Originally she didn't want to say these words. If everything went well, of course she would be happy to see it happen. Whether the Gwo family is really that powerful or not, it has nothing to do with her. After all, she is a businessman. Her goal is to win over the Yun family first, and then win over the entire Zhongcheng and even the national market. But now that it has progressed to this point, Luo Yuanhang is still talking about the so-called Gwo family brought by Chu Zinggao, so she can't help but pour cold water on him. People, it's better to be sober. However, Luo Yuanhang didn't think so. Just because he didn't answer didn't mean he acquiesced to her point of view. In fact, he has indeed seen how powerful Su Yun is. In that encirclement and sneak attack, she could deal with so many thugs by herself. From then on, he became wary of her. He couldn't tell how powerful the people of the Gwo family were, but one thing was certain. They were at least much more powerful than ordinary people like them, and even some of the bodyguards they carried with them. Of course, he didn't intend to tell Yun Chugzio these words. After all, there was no point in arguing with her about this matter. It's hard to say what's going on with the Chu family now. The police have already intervened. It's not appropriate for us to take any further action. Now that we have some free time, let's settle the matter here first. Luo Yuanhang raised his hand and put out the cigarette butts in the ashtray. He sat up straight and said, one step at a time. Yun Chugzio bowed and said, wait a minute. It's not like we can't do anything with the Chu family now. Looking at her doubtfully, she smiled and took out a USB flash drive. This is the recording of the day. Take it back and listen to it carefully to find out what you can use. I think you should do this kind of thing better than me. Public opinion, you are the best at taking advantage of it. How come you have this? As soon as the words came out of his mouth, Luo Yuanhang felt that he was asking too much. This woman's methods are indeed very simple. End of this chapter.